Hello and welcome to the TOGAF Certified Study Course. My name is Phil Zito and I run the blog Building Automation Monthly. I am currently in the process of pursuing my second exam for the TOGAF Certified. Basically, if you're not familiar with TOGAF, that is the Open Group Architecture Framework, and it is I would say it's the most common architecture framework out there for building an enterprise architecture. Some would argue that there's others out there, but I see it the most, and I feel that it has the most applicableness towards enterprise architecture and just all the things that I end up doing. A little bit about myself. I'm a technology enthusiast. I love technology. Built my own computer back when it was the x86 had just came out, and I built a computer and proceeded to break it and build it again. I have a wide range of expertise. I started in building automation, which for those of you who don't know, buildings don't just air condition themselves. There's actually entire programmable control systems that use feedback loops and essentially adjust and control all of the environment. When I started in that, it wasn't very complex, but now you're getting into the world of data analytics and all sorts of other things. I've been in this realm for about 13 years, working on some increasingly complex technology projects. Right now, I work for Johnson Controls, and at Johnson Controls, I oversee several different things. I run our partner ecosystem. We have roughly 100 plus partners for our building-wide systems integration. So overseeing our technology projects. I manage our ecosystem to make sure that either our partners can sell technology or we can sell our partners technology. So I act as a channel partner manager for that for all of North America. I also oversee enterprise architecture for our technology projects. I'm our systems integrator. I figure out how we make stuff work. A lot of what we do hasn't been done before, so it's really cool because it's not like I'm just working with an enterprise service bus and I'm creating a plugin and coding something. A lot of what we do are working with technologies that don't work together. For example, building automation systems in BACnet. How many enterprise architecture or architects have ever heard of the word BACnet? Not many. It's an IP-based protocol that the building automation field works and uses. And then you take that, and now you've got to tie into an electronic medical record system, or you've got a flight tracking system at an airport or something like that. These systems that normally don't come together, that's what we get to do. It's really, really awesome. So when I say I've worked on some of the most interesting technology projects, well, I can't name them because customers kind of frown upon that. I could tell you that some of the largest, most marquee buildings in North America, we've went and designed the enterprise architecture for. But this course is not about me. It is about you being able to, one, understand TOGAF and apply TOGAF. I really do think it's a good framework, and I've used bits and pieces of it in a lot of different things I've done, from product management to enterprise architecture and so on. This course is going to loosely follow the official TOGAF Part 2 study guide, and it's going to go through these pieces here: the overview, phases, requirements, iteration, security, service-oriented architecture, etc., etc., etc. What I'm going to do, when I say loosely follow, I'm going to follow the chapters so that if you're reading the guide, you can follow the chapters, you can dig deeper, you can go and take the questions. I think it's a really good guide. But I'm going to show how you do these different pieces. So when I talk about the ADM overview, which I'm going to give a very brief one in a second, but the next video will actually show you how this applies. I will talk through a project I've done, or I'll make up a project if I can't talk about a specific project. And I'll talk about, what does it really look like sitting down in the C-suite with the CIO or COO and actually talking about their business process. What does it look like when you create a matrix and you lay out business use cases and you say, I'm going to do this, and the ramifications are across these systems and across these stakeholders. What does that actually look like? I'm going to show you, because that's one thing I've noticed is missing in a lot of TOGAF training, unless you want to pay for it, is what does this stuff actually look like in real life? I mean, okay, so you've memorized that the enterprise continuum is a view of the architecture repository. That's great. What does an architecture repository look like? What does a building block look like? How do they go in there? How do you catalog them? How do you go and actually build this stuff? That's what I hope to go over in this course. And, this is my first time creating a kind of a whole course, but so I really appreciate your feedback on it. I'm going to take the expertise I've done on literally hundreds of buildings, and I'm going to show you from the business level all the way down to the technical level how to implement these. Like I said, the materials we'll be using: the official Open Group Study Guide, the TOGAF 9.1 standard, and then various things. As I go through this, each deck will have an appendix, and any websites I use, I'll cite those, I'll reference them. And I won't be bringing up the standard because I don't know what the law is against sharing the standard on the screen, but you can easily reference it. I'll call out what part it is, and it's online, and it's on a website. You can just go right to it. All right, so what is the ADM? ADM stands for the Architecture Development Method. So it is an iterative process where you essentially start at the preliminary phase. You only do the prelim once. And the prelim is basically you're sitting down with the person who wants to build an architecture. And this person could be a line manager, this person could be the CTO, it could be the CEO. Doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters from a perspective of influence. Obviously, a line manager is not going to have as much influence as the CEO. But basically, what you're going to do is you're going to start with the preliminary phase. You're going to get a request for work, going to move you into the architecture vision. Architecture vision is going to say, okay, what do we want this thing to look like? All right, and then once we know what we want it to look like, we're going to do a couple inputs and outputs, and those I'm not going to describe today because this would get really long. But essentially, you create a statement of work, then you go through phases B through D, your business, your data, and your technology. Where you're going to lay out your baseline architectures and your target architectures. You're going to do gap analysis. You're going to build your architecture definition method. So you're going to lay all this stuff out, and essentially what you're doing there, I like to call that either pre-sales or consulting, or whether it's internal or external, it's the early phase of the project. Essentially, you're going, and during all these phases, you're selling. You're taking your architecture vision, you're selling stakeholders, you're selling people who are like, why the hell are you coming into my plant, and you're going to take a system that works really well, and, or at least in their head it works really well, and you're going to tell them that now they've got to go and all their systems are going to route up to some central hive and who knows, and somewhere in a data center in Oregon, and they have no control over it anymore. And now you're going to get a lot of objections. Well, suffice to say, that's the fun part of the initial aspect of an architectural development method. You're going to go and you're going to iterate through, you're going to create target by interviewing stakeholders, by looking at your gap analysis. You're going to start creating architecture building blocks. If you don't have them in your architecture repository, you're going to start populating that. Maybe grab a framework or two. Go like the OMG group and grab some of their frameworks. I prefer free stuff, so oftentimes I'll build or I'll look for open source. So you're going to take this, and once you've got that data and you populated your architecture repository, and you've got buy-off, you've built your definition so everyone understands, then you move into phase E, which is going to be opportunities and solutions. So opportunities and solutions, essentially, that's when you start to build RFIs, RFPs, requests for information, requests for proposals. start to send these out on the street. You start to get systems integrators or companies who respond. You start sending you product tech sheets. You get overwhelmed in information. And at this point, you have to go and you have to place your architecture building blocks and convert them to solution building blocks. So you move across the enterprise continuum, and essentially you're saying, all right, my enterprise continuum, now I'm starting to move from the foundation architecture to an organization-specific architecture. That's what this is all about. Creating architecture capability, something self-sustaining, and creating a repository of data, and creating an organization-specific architecture. So you do this, right? You go and in phase E, you start to build out your transition architectures. Phase E and F kind of blend together. Phase E is almost like your target. You're building out your target transition architectures. You're building out the idea. You're picking products. You're starting to see what's in the enterprise, what's in my architecture landscape. What do I actually have in place? What works? What can work with that? And then I take that and I convert it in phase F, which is going to be your implementation. And what you're going to be doing in your implementation planning is you're going to actually be going and getting buy-off on this. You're going to be getting ready to move into the architecture contract, which is the next phase. And you're going to be starting to say, okay, we got our transition architectures, we got our work packages. Now we're getting this formalized. This is what we're going to do. We agree. All right. Now you start to go and figure out who's going to staff it, and you start to procure. You get your RFP responses back. You select your products, and then you go into governance, which is phase G. G is where you oversee your implementations, architecture governance. You oversee your implementations. You're going to measure them against a compliance assessment. Say, is this in compliance to our target architecture? Are we transitioning? Are we making sure that everything we're doing is right? Okay? So very briefly I'm going through that, but basically you're governing the actual execution. So from A to F, you don't execute. You do development, but you don't execute. G, you execute and you govern. H, which is change management, architecture change management, you're going to make sure that you're meeting the business goals. You're going to see, do I need to make changes? Do I need to roll through another iteration of ADM? And you're basically going to go and say, all right, I have instituted this architecture. This architecture works. Now I've got a set of metrics that I expect it to achieve. If it's not achieving those, I can ask for a dispensation, which basically means, hey, I'm not able to meet the goal. I need a kind of a get out of jail free card for a little bit so that I can use this until I can find something to replace it. You're going to ask for a change request, which is basically, hey, I just want to change something, but I don't want to go through a whole other ADM cycle. Or you're going to reiterate through the whole ADM. If you've done things right, you should be iterating through cycles, not iterating through the whole ADM again. That's not to say you can't iterate through the whole ADM again, but that's a lot of effort. Really, you should be iterating through your building blocks and your patterns, not iterating through an entire cycle, because ideally each transition architecture should be built in such a way that you execute it and you change management, and then when technology refreshes come, you recycle, or if there's some brand new business idea. But most businesses, they don't change the core business, so once you get this architecture in place, it really just becomes change management, typically. All right, so that was a very brief overview of the ADM. This deck did not have a lot of slides by design. In my next decks, when I actually start going through these, I'm going to be using Word documents and Paint and kind of drawing things out, and actually we'll create an architecture principle next because we'll be in the prelim phase. So we'll create an architecture principle, show you how to create a request for work. I'll show you how to create a couple other categories of outputs for that. And we'll talk through stakeholder engagement, how you create a stakeholder map. Even though that's phase A, I still think you should have it in prelim because you kind of need to know who you're talking to. All right, I appreciate you watching this video. I'll try to keep each one under 20 minutes, which means I may break some of the phases up. Look forward to your comments and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.